Welcome to this week's episode, Resiliency Without Certainty. In this episode, Jeff and Erin are joined by Travis McGrew of Tracker to break down what resiliency really looks like when you get responsibility before clarity. If you're leading through uncertainty right now, this conversation will help give you practical ways to decide, communicate, and stay grounded without getting jaded.
Leaders often interpret uncertainty as incompetence because they confuse not having answers as not having capability. The mistake is expecting confidence to look like certainty when real leadership often shows up in curiosity. When you're uncertain about something, get curious. Start asking.
Highly Adaptive is a podcast where staffing and consulting leaders learn to outpace change. Hosted by Jeff Pelliccio and Erin MacKenzie, they'll cut through the noise to bring you practical moves you could use right now to grow, adapt, and lead. When leaders think about resilience, they usually picture grit, toughness, or just pushing through. But what if resilience isn't about endurance at all? What if it's built in moments where the data isn't there, the training hasn't caught up, or the playbook just disappears? Because here's the truth. Most leaders don't get clarity before responsibility. They get responsibility first. And in those moments, leaders don't fail because they aren't capable. They fail because they don't know how to decide, learn, or move through discomfort at the same time. Today, Erin and I want to unpack what actually builds resilience when certainty, comfort, and formal support systems are missing. And to do that, we're joined by someone who's lived through just about every version of leadership uncertainty you could imagine and learned how to stay adaptable without hardening in the process.
This is great. I'm excited here. So you guys, I appreciate Jeff for truly setting the stage because that was a great introduction, which now let me more formally introduce you to Travis McGrew.
Hey, Erin. Hey, Jeff. How are you?
Good.
We're good. I'm going to do a quick intro, Trav, because some of you out there might not know you. So you guys, Travis is truly a customer success leader for Tracker. And for those of you that obviously don't know my relationship with Travis, Travis has been a colleague. I actually made him fly out to Lexington, Kentucky to meet me on his first day when we did work together at one point in time. But he is truly a wealth of information. You can call him about anything from business to sports, you name it. And Travis has honestly morphed into a true friend through and through. But that's not what we're here to talk about because Trav has built his career across multiple industries, which we're going to get into, and leadership contexts. I mean, I think that honestly, Trav, you've probably done like everything. You've owned businesses. You've operated inside of staffing firms. We're going to get into this more, but you've also like owned like music studios and you've led teams also now in SaaS and client success. But why we got you, we wanted to kind of really bring you in because we feel this is a great conversation because it's not the number of roles that you've really like held throughout your career, but it's been really how you kind of navigated all the different kind of feelings, uncertainty, discomfort. You've had unplanned changes. And through all of that, you've never let those moments really, truly define or derail you. So we are excited to dive in and we welcome you here to Highly Adaptive.
I'm excited. Thanks for your time.
Of course. Okay, Trav, I got to tell a fun fact because deep down, Jeff, you might not know this. I really am a wannabe surfer. I started surfing way back in the day. I practiced. I literally did practice surfing. And I had this conversation with Travis because he used to own oh my God, Trav, how many surf shops? 11 surf shops through North America? Yeah,
for what it's worth, Erin, I'm a wannabe surfer too. So I'm still learning as far as that goes. But I've came up with the idea with a buddy of mine. He had the idea and the backing. And, just kind of built off of that vision. I went in and helped him build teams and run the day-to-day with that. For me, didn't know much about the industry. And that was in Virginia Beach. And I grew up in Pennsylvania, so pretty landlocked up there. And, moved down there and the idea came to. And through hard work and sweat equity, we put something together. It was a lot of fun.
I was going to say, I don't recall the Pennsylvania license plate saying the spirit of surfing.
It definitely does. It definitely does. I may have snowboarded a little bit, but not surfing up there.
Did you have like the long hair?
Oh, I definitely did. Well, I mean, as you'll hear, I grew up in a military family, and my dad would never let me have long hair. So the second I moved out, I let it grow out. Never knew I had curly hair. I have curly hair for what it's worth, and then I went from there, and got tired of it and shaved my head. So I had it for a little while. Yeah. And I actually blonde, believe it or not.
I love it. I will tell you, like, I'm not taking this down a rabbit hole here, but I bought so much sex wax, which is what you use for your surfboards. So
well, the first time I saw that, Erin, again, I wasn't a surfer. I'm like, what is this? What is this? So,
well, one of these days we're going to go out surfing, even if we're wannabe surfers together. So
that's awesome.
So yeah, this will be fun. Jeff, you going to come join us?
I feel like you always bring the conversation to this spot, like between like operational plumbers and now sex wax. Like it is nothing short of exciting in conversations with you always. Well, so I'm going to bring this in. I'll try surfing. I can tell you I've already tried. Not great at it. But I'll give it a shot. Like I'm more the paddleboard type.
Yeah.
I'm more the paddleboard, you know what I mean? But like I'll try surfing. We'll give it a shot. Let's bring this all full circle. Let's adapt to the environment here. But let's talk about sort of like responsibility coming before clarity. Right? So let's kind of like dial us into that space. A lot of leaders assume that they're supposed to feel, quote, ready before stepping into bigger responsibility. And in reality, that's rarely how it works. So what do you see happening when responsibility shows up before the real obligation of the role is clearly defined?
Yeah, great question. For me, responsibility shows up before clarity. It often forces growth faster than comfort would allow it, right? I've seen waiting to feel ready, right? We're all guilty of waiting to feel ready, right? Personal lives and professional lives usually means waiting too long, right? You get behind the ball a little bit on things. So I found in my faith, my marriage, my career, responsibility has a way of creating clarity through action, right? Once you take action, a lot of times clarity will find itself. Analysis paralysis, right? Sometimes we get too guilty of staying put, right? We're waiting for that clarity. A lot of times it's happened in my life, and I wish I would have started earlier.
Sure.
I think that clarity is important too. I mean, and I think that there's often times, and I'd love to get your perspective on this, Trav, like where leaders in any organization, they often kind of interpret uncertainty as incompetence instead of also like content. So you did say you need to have that clarity, but I think there could be uncertainty elements to this. And so it'd be interesting, like, do you feel that way? Like, do you see that like sometimes leaders will go in and they like look at this as like, you don't really have the clarity. And so I see that as not the right direction, or they really look at it as not having the competence to drive things forward.
Yeah, I think leaders often interpret uncertainty as incompetence because they confuse not having answers as not having capability, right? And that's not always the case, right? The mistakes leaders make is expecting confidence to look like certainty when real leadership often shows up in curiosity, right? So for me, I think the curiosity is where the leadership comes in, right? And when you're uncertain about something, get curious, right? Start asking. I mean, we've talked about different things I've done throughout my life. I mean, I own music studios, right? And to this day, I still don't know how to make music, and
you still don't know how to surf.
And I still don't know how to surf, right? So, I think just get curious, right? I got a job one time working at the Center for Disease Control. Buddy called me and says, I have an opportunity for you and doing security encryption on computer. And I said, I don't have a clue how to do that. He said, I've got a book. On Friday, Monday, I interviewed, got the job, right? You just got to get curious. And I think that leads you to clarity sometimes.
I love that.
So what signals, right? Let's think about this from like a real actionable standpoint. Like what signals should leaders be looking for when the answers aren't available, right? Like what's sort of like those those vibrations or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So for me, huge Alabama fan, right? So naturally, I like Nick Saban, and I love listening to Nick Saban speak. Right? He always talks about the process. Right? He talks about how if you focus on outcomes, you're not going to get the job done. Right? So if you focus on the process, the outcomes happen. Right? So for me, part of the process is behaviors. And when I think about behaviors, I think about like ownership, take responsibility in the outcomes, right? That are going to happen. Adaptability. Can you learn fast? Can you course correct or apply feedback, right? Action. Do these people move forward with information they have, right? And lastly, probably most importantly, is communication, right? I think transparency, calmness, and alignment and communication would be my big takeaways there.
Nice.
I think that's huge. So curiosity built on with the communication, the transparency, I think that's key. And I mean, curiosity has been a theme that we've brought up throughout. And I think that it's something that's never going to go away. I think it's like if you have to stay curious.
Right. It gets me in trouble sometimes, but I stay curious. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I used to have a little Curious George, and it was my reminder to stay curious about asking questions, understanding, like never be afraid of something that you don't know. And I love that for leaders here.
I mean, it's interesting, right? Like leaning into the unknown is like the responsibility of the leader, and then taking that ownership and responsibility without necessarily having that clarity, right? That is the basis for all the experience that people are gaining in here. I love that.
I have a question for you, Trav. So like one thing that I wanted to kind of understand is kind of when leaders hit uncertainty, they usually try to eliminate like that level of discomfort, which I think is pretty natural. But what if discomfort is the thing that's actually should be telling them something important? And I think that's like that curiosity, the discomfort, the something new, the something they don't know. Do you find that they should be kind of looking more into that discomfort as a learning element?
Yeah. And honestly, I think one of the things when we get uncomfortable, right, we start to avoid things a little bit. And I think one of the things for me that people avoid is the truth, right? It's simply just the truth. And when I think about things that we avoid, and the reason they do it is they can't handle it, right? This has a major impact on trust, right? And when I think about trust with teams, teams are aware, right? All of us have ever led teams. They know when a leader isn't telling the truth, right? They know when they're sidestepping. They know it long before it ever comes to the water cooler talk. People are talking about it, and then the leader comes out and finally handles the truth, and people are like, "Yeah, we've known the whole time," right? And when you lose the truth, it's hard to be resilient, right? It's hard to get your teams back. So for me, just owning the truth, which is one of my core values, even when it's uncomfortable, that's taken me some years to fully grasp. But who I am is who I am, right? And the truth is part of that.
You know where I want to go with this, Jeff? I'm jumping in. I have to, because I really want to go.
Blondes?
You can't handle the truth.
100%.
I'm like a few good men. I had to. I got.
Want me on that wall?
Sorry, I had to do it. I was like, wait a second, but it's reality too. Like, I mean, so true. So, Jeff, I'm cutting you off.
And I think the people think the truth is the problem, misguides the problem itself, when actually it's the truth, right? And people get sidetracked with that when they think the issue is sharing the truth. Just share the problem. That is the truth.
So let's talk about, you bring up a really interesting organizational pain point, right? Which is that if the leadership isn't expressing honestly, like what the circumstances are, the individuals in the remaining part of the organization, the example you just gave, aren't necessarily willing to contribute in order to help identify that, right? Because now that creates a little bit of conflict between leadership and your individuals that are maybe in the front line or in other parts of the organization. How does, let's talk about what kind of harm that creates, right? If your frontline team has the information, but the culture is that you're not welcome in sharing it for whatever reason, like it kind of puts the company behind the 8 ball, right? It kind of always has them lagging in the thing that they need to work on. And unfortunately, you almost lose the signal completely, and you kind of walk into a pitfall, no?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's even more dangerous than that, Jeff. I mean, for me, when you avoid the truth, it creates ambiguity, right? And with ambiguity, that fuels fear, right? That fuels fear within an organization. And that fear then creates a misalignment in efforts, right? So people are at that point get a little bit, what I like to say, scrap and clawing to protect themselves, right? Versus as working as a team, you get a lot of individuals because, if you can't trust leadership, what can you trust? So I think the alignment on efforts really gets out of whack, right? So for me, I think the fear that you create with that is the problem.
So true. And when you have fear, then you're not able to drive forward. You're not able to some form of fear is good, but it depends on how it shows up. If you're not being truthful, if you have that ambiguity, I think that it creates, like you said, it's got a wall. You separate kind of where things are. One of the other things, like when I'm thinking from like a leadership perspective, and we don't talk honestly enough about, but is how much leaders are expected to know that honestly nobody ever kind of formally teaches them. And I'm kind of transitioning gears here because I know, Trav, you've been in multiple different leadership roles. And to your point, you said you picked up a book and learned on day one how to do something for the Department of, what did you say? Department of Disease Control? What was it? I can't even remember. CDC. Thank you. See, can't even get my terminology here. But I mean, so one of the things that I'd be interested from your perspective is like, how much do you think that leaders learn like on the fly, like they're not doing? Like, I guess we really don't have like formal training, always kind of lags behind when it comes to these leadership demands. What are your kind of thoughts around that, where you have to pick this stuff up and it has to become more naturally than something you're learning?
Erin, I mean, that's life, right? I mean, that's all facets of life. I'm a father. I've got a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old right now. There's no manual out there how to raise it properly, and it's the end all be all. For me, in real life application, I had to learn people, right? And that sounds so crazy to say you had to learn people. There's tons of trainings out there on how to manage people. The thing that I took away was, how do you manage individuals, right? That's a lot different than managing people. I'll go into that. For me, everybody has different things going on, right? And I managed a small team. There's about 10, 15 people, everybody from divorces going on, eating disorders, just all of this, right? I can manage the people when it comes to the business. Here, do this. Here's your criteria, things of that nature. We're all supposed to leave our personal lives at home, but it shows up at work, right? It does, no matter how hard you try to do that. So for me, learning real time how to manage individuals, that's still a work in progress. I'll be honest. That's still something that I am very curious about because everybody's different. Right? Everybody needs different things.
Who wouldn't love to just like kick open the door and scream and be like, I just need these things? That's not going to fly. Like that doesn't get you anywhere, especially in today's day and age. I think that there is perhaps, some elements of the generational gaps that I bet would, definitely cater to this conversation as well as to like what their expectations and experience has been in the work system. And so like, as you kind of go through between baby boomers, Gen X, and then millennials and Gen Z, and now the alpha generation or generation alpha, like they each have these different experiences as they've been exposed to different life situations, which formulates their opinion as to like what should and shouldn't be either allowed and or supported in a work environment. I feel like I'm kind of on that bridge. Like I'm 40, I'll be 49 this month, I guess. So like on that bridge where it's like, I'm heavily influenced by the environments that the baby boomer generation had experienced. And then I'm not quite close enough to a lot of the changes that took place with like regards to like millennials and Gen Z. So, I'm in a bit more of, I think, the precursor to the space where we live today, where when you're leading and managing people, you have to take into consideration like so many of these other softer elements. It can't just be about the business. You have to be able to leverage, helping individuals navigate their lives so that they can be productive at work. And so that is, it's a specific challenge, I think, that a lot of leadership faces today. And I just don't know necessarily how that plays out long term. I mean, how have you found yourself in kind of like that evolution of how you're managing people? Like, how have you seen that shift, let's say, over the last decade?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you bring that up, Jeff. My father is an officer, retired officer in the military. And when he heard I work remotely, his first response was, does your company really need you? Right? I mean, it's just a different mindset, right? Does your company, I mean, if you can work from home and they don't need you in the office, do they really even need you? And it is just a different mindset,
such a bold
right?
question.
And my sister and I, and I had to talk him through that a little bit, right? And then COVID hit, and he was able to see how things were executed. And then you started hearing stories about how they're bringing everything back in, which just fueled his mindset of, see, I told you they need him in the office. And I have to explain to him, with my staffing background, that a lot of your top talents, that's one of their demands, especially the younger crowd. So to manage it, and I talk about how, I worked at a company, I was leading a team, chief operating officer, and I was managing individuals, right? And at the end of that, when I left, I was almost hardened by it, right? Where I was like, never again will I manage individuals. I am managing people in the company. That's it, right? Going forward, I don't have the time for all of that. I don't have the energy for it. Took a deep breath, right? And look back at it. And I'm
it's
like,
a mindset shift too.
Yeah.
It is a mind shift, right? And that's not who I am. That's not where my success comes from, right? And being a people person, is where I find my success. And I was able to catch myself before I, implemented that mindset permanently. And I'm still back to, caring about the individual, managing the business, but can still care about the individual. Comes back to listening, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it comes back to listening and communication. Younger crowd has a different mindset on things, right? Older crowd has a different mindset. So there's a blend there.
Yeah.
And I think they all have value.
I mean, I think this is interesting because a lot of what you're describing as well has all been self-enabled, self-taught. You're realizing on the fly, in the pressure moments, at work, probably also at home from your kids, because those are pressure moments as well.
Best teachers.
Right?
Man.
Yeah, I understand. I'm learning from my dogs that they don't even talk back to me. Well, sometimes they do. But I guess where I'm going with this is like, so Trav, like, how do leaders, when they're in this moment of kind of getting hardened, to your point, where you mentioned that you were kind of getting in this position of being hardened, how do leaders cross that line without kind of like realizing it? How do they detach themselves? What does this look like?
Yeah, great question, right? For me, I think how do you keep from getting hardened by it, right? And one of the things growing up, my dad used to say to me, you don't have to worry about me giving you a hard time. You have to worry about when I stop, right? And that really impacts me to this day. That changed everything for me, right? And what I mean by that is you don't have to take everything so personal, right? I think in a lot of ways, he coached my sports teams, right? And the car ride home, I mean, any athlete that ever rode in a vehicle with a parent that was a coach was always uncomfortable, right? And I just remember him saying to me, you don't have to worry about me coaching you and giving you a hard time. It's when I stop. And what I mean by that is I was taking it personal. My dad has a problem with me, right? My dad doesn't like this. My dad doesn't like that. He was coaching me. And I think as a leader, taking feedback doesn't have to be personal, right? And I think the hardening comes in when you correlate the feedback to your title and your title to who you are, right? And I think if you look at your title is what you do, right? And so just being a little less emotional and taking things personal is how I handle that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you translate that down to your team as well? Because I think that's a great lesson. One of these days, I'm going to meet your dad. But I mean, I've heard the stories.
The dad-isms, right?
We'll see if he's listening.
Yeah, the dad-isms.
See if he's listening here. Virginia Beach, here I come.
Yeah.
But with that, because it's hard. It's easy for us to understand because we've gone through leadership.
Mm-hmm.
We're in a leadership role. We have to take that critique. And I think that's a great lesson from your dad. But what about your team? If you're giving them feedback, you have emotions that run the gamut and personal, where people want it, people don't. So do you also translate that and kind of also share, like, you guys, the moment I stop giving you feedback is the moment you should be concerned? How do you also portray that down to, as a leader, to your own members of your team?
Erin, you could ask my 5-year-old daughter what it means, right? I mean, I use this in my life, right? And so most definitely, I believe being candid in that, almost in a joking, relaxing way of, I'm not giving you a hard time, right? But when I stop that is when you have to worry. That means we're no longer, in the staffing world. When somebody stops giving you a hard time about, you're making enough dials, you're making this. I mean, you start to worry, right? So I always say, take a deep breath, embrace that, and grow with it. I'm really trying to build you. My kids, they'll tell you. I mean, I say it to them all the time. Dad, why are you asking me this? Why are you doing that? Don't worry about me giving you a hard time. Worry when I stop. Okay, Dad. So
I'm curious, does in fostering this in a professional environment, do you feel it opens the opportunity for more 360-degree feedback? And is that beneficial and helpful?
100%, right? I mean, I think it shows vulnerability, right? I think it shows that, I'm human too. My title is my title, right? I'm here. We're in the trenches together. We're working together, and we'll get it done,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I always feel like I get feedback, good feedback, but I think it's just being honest with each other. Yeah.
Which goes back to your communication, your transparency. Yeah. So a full circle there.
I mean, listen, the resilience is about that regulated response, right? Not that emotional denial. So I think that, like, being able to take the information in for what it's worth, as opposed to trying to read between lines that don't exist, I think is definitely the key takeaway, both up and downstream. But let's kind of move into the compounding effect of adaptive leadership and sort of the resilience that compounds through sort of self-referenced progress, if you will, right? So comparison is everywhere, especially in leadership. Why does that sort of erode, or how does that erode resilience so quickly?
Yeah, I mean, you'll feel like I have a lot of mottos, but I do. You don't have to keep up with the Joneses when you are the Joneses, right? And what I mean by that is not that you have everything, but you're happy with what you have, right? And I think that transpires to business when you try to compare yourself to other people. In the staffing world, I learned this, that when you try to staff everything, we have a saying: when you become all things to everybody,
nothing to anyone.
Nothing to anyone, right? So for me, the resiliency, how do you bounce back to something when you don't know what you're bouncing back to, right? How do you have that resiliency to bounce back to something when it was the competitor that you're trying to bounce back to? You have to maintain your identity so that even when you get lost, right, you're back on course to come back to who you are.
There's one of my wife's good friends. Actually, it was her professor when she was in college, and now he's a colleague. They work together at the university. He always says, "You don't rise to the occasion; you fall back to your education." And so it's a matter of, like, instead of you trying to compare and compete and which competition is good and it's healthy and it's wise, but like when you find yourself into those positions where you're stumbling, perhaps reaching further into the unknown isn't necessarily the right decision, but rather fall back into that space where you have that experience, you have got a foundation that you could work from, and then stabilize and kind of figure out what your next steps are from there, right?
Sure, yeah. For sure. That muscle memory.
Yeah.
So this is like a great point, because this is like also diving into looking at yourself internally and falling back, like you were saying, Jeff. But how do resilient leaders actually measure that from an internal standpoint? How do they measure, like when they stop benchmarking against everyone else, how do they look at that internal growth point?
Yeah. Erin, it's simple, right? It becomes more honest and sustainable. Right. When you start creating those benchmarks that you can relate to, and then it's being more honest with yourself, right? And it's more sustainable. You're no longer chasing the validation of your competition, right? Your validation comes from something that is achievable, and you're chasing the truth, right? For me, you're chasing the truth And I think the way you measure that is what we just talked about. You don't compare yourself to the other companies in your competition. You compare yourself to yourself. And that's the validation, right? You know when you're on the mark and when you're not, right?
So do you have like internal kind of benchmarks that you create for yourself and you're like, man, I'm not living up to this right now? Like your internal scorecard?
Yeah, there's constantly change, Erin, right? There's constantly change, fortunately or unfortunately. The key is not to change them to make life easier, right? And I have those benchmarks as a husband, as a father, as a man of faith, all of those at work, all of those benchmarks are there. And, it's interesting as you get closer to those benchmarks, I feel like they sometimes get further away.
Sure.
Right? Sometimes you realize that journey's even longer and further. As I start to feel like I'm being a good dad, I'm like, well, let's notch it up some more, right? As I start feeling like business is good, is it ever enough, right? So you have to put the attainable to be sustainable in my mind.
Ooh, I like that.
That's a good quote.
Yeah, it's a great quote. You have to put the attainable to be sustainable. So resilient leaders are competing with themselves, not the market, right? So they're working from the framework of where they are. And, it's interesting. When I was a lot younger, like really young, like single digits, I don't know like what had happened, but I realized like if I competed with myself as opposed to everyone else, that I had a chance of winning every single day. And so I find that this is really fascinating. Like it's really triggering on a lot of things like from my own personal life where, there's always going to be someone smarter, faster, stronger, better, whatever. But if you just compete with yourself on a regular basis, and then that also bars the fact that like there's no complacency, right? So like it's never good enough.
Sure.
So it always sort of works in your favor to keep pushing. I really like that. I like that a lot. I think it's a good note for people to have that like, whether you have a true hard and fast metric that's going to help you identify or quantify what your growth has been in this space. I think, looking at your progress day over day, week over week, month over month, year over year, and at least being able to point to the things that are substantially better as a result of your efforts. I think, maybe it's about putting together those metrics in the review as opposed to like creating them in advance when you have a lot of unknowns. So I think there's some really good stuff here that people can take away that might help them start to feel better about their efforts as they, navigate the space and deal with the uncertainty of leadership. So I really like that a lot. It's great.
And Jeff, I'll add this. I mean, maybe not to even feel better about their efforts, but to be real about their efforts, right? I mean, sometimes, I look at it and I'm not always feeling good about my efforts, but I can at least be real with them.
Yep,
right?
That's fair.
And that's key is to be real with them.
Yeah, for sure.
I like that truthful to yourself at the same time, not just being truthful throughout. So Trav, one thing that I always like to do and we like to do here is like for the leaders that are listening out there and for all the folks that are listening, where can they start? Like, how do they know if they're avoiding discomfort instead of developing through it?
Sure. I mean, let's be honest. They know, in my opinion, right? I mean, most people know, right? Most people...
If you know, you know.
you know, right?
We might be giving too much credit in some cases, but yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, to some degree, right? You've always, I think the imposter mentality comes in faster than most mentalities, right? And I think most people know. They can tell they're avoiding discomfort rather than developing through it, in my opinion, by noticing their own patterns. Are they deflecting, right? Are they postponing decisions or even rationalizing uncertainty? Right? When things come in, are we making that, decision fit that we know probably shouldn't, when they know they need to be engaging in those areas?
So what is something that leaders can stop doing when uncertainty hits? Like, it's funny, you create this sort of like this scenario in your head that, the day to day, the life of a leader is happening like continually. The one thing that I definitely learned is that, as I rose into more leadership roles, my sleepless nights, I would worry about everything. Like I would wake up and I'd be thinking about things. I'd go to bed, I'd be thinking about things. So it's hard, right? Because the uncertainty is not necessarily a triggerable offense. It's that space in between. So what are things that leaders can do to either better identify the uncertainty and at least make that something that is a trigger for themselves, or that they can stop doing around uncertainty?
Yeah. For me, Jeff, this hits home, right? I've dealt with this early on in my career, and it's easier to say it than actually do it. But I would say self-doubt, right? Everything you just mentioned comes from yourself, right? And I'm about to quote Dr. Phil here, believe me when I say this.
Oh no.
yeah, right. Oh no, brace yourself, right? And I don't know how true it is, but it resonated with me, right? It is something like the average person can say 200 words a minute, but that little voice in your head can say almost 2,000. So you have to be careful what you're saying to yourself. Right? There's people that I interact with that I hear them say something to me and I'll say back to them, just ask yourself how many times you've said that to yourself, right? How many times have you done that, that self-harm in your head? You've got to be careful with that because that little voice has us all on the outside. We can put the show on, but in the inside, we're starting to create that self-doubt. So I say, just protect yourself a little bit, believe in yourself. And what's the worst that's going to happen? Again, quoting my father, it's not a mistake unless you do it twice, right? So, he said that to me the first time I got a speeding ticket, right? And I called him and told him I got a speeding ticket. He was in Hawaii and with my mom, and he said, son, it's only a mistake if you do it twice. And that stuck with me, right? So stop doubting yourself. Put good things in your head. And I think you repeat that, you build off of that.
I like it.
I love that. I think that's key. We have so many different quotes that you've given us here today. I think we're gonna have to have like a quote book, the highly adaptive quote book that comes.
Full disclosure, I've heard a lot of these and they just stick with me. I can't take credit for them, but
I love it.
I do, buddy. After a certain period, I claim them as mine, but
I have one more question for you, Trav, because I wanted to kind of dive into this just a little bit before we kind of wrap everything up here. But what do you feel really changes when kind of leaders start to build that resilience intentionally and they start focusing on it? Like, okay, I'm going to really hone in. I'm going to focus on this myself instead of accidentally.
Yeah, this is very important, right? For me, it's the self-empowerment, right? Going back to taking care of the self, it's the self-empowerment. It changes your response to the pressure, right? You start to learn to reflect. You seek feedback, right? You start to change your habits to recover, right? So for me, it's self, right? In the self-empowerment that you actually garner to other people to give you the feedback, to give you that critique and to accept it. It's almost a calmness, right? That comes over that, you don't feel it until you feel it.
That's pretty awesome, right? Because it sort of almost, the confidence kind of almost breeds the next step, right? Like it kind of continues to compound and build upon itself. I like this. I mean, so listen, I have a very serious question that we're going to ask now. Right? On the back of all of this, we've been asking guests in the past for their quote that keeps them sort of going, what's the motivational thing? But Travis, for you, I think we're going to kick off this new agenda.
No.
If you had a walk-up song, the track that sets your tone when you step into something important, I don't know if that is the stage. I don't know if that is a sporting event. I don't know if it's the ring or a cage match. But when you step in to do something important, what would be that track for you and why?
I've got to preface it with this, okay? It's humbling, but I would go with Aloe Black's I'm the Man. And it's not because I think I'm the man, but it is because that little voice in my head that I just spoke about, I need to keep telling myself 2,000 times a minute, you've got this, you're the man, right? So as I think about that, it's not that I necessarily think I'm the man, but I need to tell myself I am.
I like that.
Right? So I would go, yeah.
That's good.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
And so Travis, I'm going to tell you, that's the first song. So we're going to start a highly adaptive playlist.
It sounds so arrogant though. I feel, yeah.
And so it's going to be on Spotify. And like, this is going to be #1 song is Aloe Black, I'm the Man. I love it. I absolutely love it. That's awesome. Thank you so much.
We're going to follow it up with Let's Get This Party Started by Pink, which is going to be mine.
Perfect.
I'm ready for it.
Perfect.
And I'm sure there's a song called Sex Wax out there too. So, we'll bring that back.
This has been fun.
That's awesome.
No, Trav, this has been so truly valuable for everyone, especially for kind of leaders that are really navigating uncertain times, uncertainty and change, kind of everything where we're at right now. And so I so respect you and appreciate you for kind of just bringing that grounded, practical perspective to this conversation that we can give to everyone. And before we kind of close out, we always like to, if people have questions, they want to find you, they want to continue learning, they need another quote from your dad or a life lesson. Where can they find you? How can people get in contact with you?
Sure. You can find me on most social media, right? Especially LinkedIn. Find me there. And then my email is travis.mcgrew@tracker-rms.com.
Cool. Are you going to any events soon? Any upcoming events that you're going to be at, conferences?
Well, that is, Jeff, that is something that I'm working on with marketing. I'm hoping to be getting out there this year and meeting with people.
Awesome. All right, marketing. We got to get on that.
That's it.
All right, excellent. Let's do a quick callback. Listen, if you came back to this episode thinking that resilience was about toughness, grit, or just pushing through, hopefully you have a different perspective. Resilience is built when leaders learn to decide without certainty. They move through discomfort and they adapt faster than the environment prepares them. And so thank you all for joining us. Travis, thank you so much for really bringing some life to this conversation. And this is fantastic. I can't wait for the next time you're on.
Yeah.
This will be great. Thank you again, Trav. And for everyone out there listening, have a great rest of your week. And we will see you next time on the next episode of Highly Adaptive.
Thank you.
Big thanks to Allied Insight, not just our sponsor, but an industry leader and preferred marketing partner to staffing and consulting businesses nationwide. If your firm is looking for expert-level support that goes beyond the logo, you know where to go, alliedinsight.com. If this episode helped you, share it with your friends and colleagues and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. While you're there, consider leaving us a review, and when you're ready for more industry insights, articles, case studies, and more, find it on allthingsstaffing.com. This episode was produced and edited by Allied Insight, and the music provided by Home Music Stock. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.